lucky enough to have Kate Ahern back here for another session, and Shibvon Sargent is also joining us. Shibvon is a mom to Samantha. Samantha's 15 years old. They live in Massachusetts, and they have the fortune of being able to work with Kate on their AAC journey. And they're going to be presenting today on augmentative and alternative communication as an intervention to anxiety and challenging behavior. So welcome.
All right, I'm going to start without you guys able to see slides, because otherwise we're going to not have enough time. So I apologize for having nothing to look at, but yeah, because that's a part. Here you go. All right, so we're going to be talking, in the last session, we talked about anxiety and Angelman syndrome and some of the different ways that we can rethink behavior as it is attributed to anxiety. And we talked about some of the ways that we can intercede at that before the behavior plays, and ways that we can intercede at that time when the behavior is happening. We talked a lot about rehearsing for times where there might be some problems with anxiety. Now we're going to focus on communication and augmentative communication as an intervention itself. So any one of the interventions we talked about earlier could be used we could spend a whole day on social stories, or we could spend a whole day on video modeling. But now we're going to spend some time specifically on communication as an intervention. So one of the things that we have to think about is, how do we teach communication? So the first thing is that we have to offer communication in order to teach it. You can't teach a kid to communicate if they don't have a means to do that. So if a child only has 5 picture symbols, they're not communicating, they're making choices, which is great. Choice making is important, but it's not communication. And it's not going to be enough language to talk about anxiety or to talk about the things that cause behavioral problems. We also have to model communication. Right? So how many of you have a baby or have had a baby in your life? All right. So let me know when you stopped talking to the baby because clearly they didn't get that you wanted them to talk back. A week. You talked to the kid for a week. They said nothing back. You stopped. Nobody? 6 weeks. You gave them 6 weeks. No? How many of you 3 months? That's a whole quarter on the IEP. You've had no progress. You're talking to this kid for a quarter. You're still going to talk to him. Wow, you're dedicated. How many of you would talk to them for a year? And then you didn't really get anything back. You got a mama and a dada, and that's it. Time to stop. Maybe think of a different communication intervention. No more talking to them. You know what? Talking to them is too much. They're not ready. Any of you ready to say that kid's not ready? No? How many of you 18 months? No, you're still going to talk to the kid. Wow, what a bunch. So what we know is that we talk to typical kids for 18 months before they really give us any language back. 18 months. How long did you speak to your child with their communication device before you gave up? And I'm not saying this bunch gave up ever, but we know that oftentimes people give up with devices. You try it for a week or two, they don't seem to get it, you stop, maybe 6 months, maybe a whole IEP, and then you abandon it. But the truth is, the kids need us to talk to them in the language they're going to learn. And if we want to use communication as an intervention for anxiety and aggression, the kids need to have language. As we're modeling it, we're creating this immersive situation where they're immersed in the language. We're also going to directly teach that language. Okay, so it's not enough to expect them to get it incidentally through modeling. We also have to specifically sit down and teach vocabulary and teach how we put words together. And finally, we have to reward communication. We have to make it have a payoff. And when we start talking about anxiety and aggressive behaviors, it's really important that using communication gets a bigger payoff than using hair pulling or using biting. Okay, we want the payoff for using appropriate communications to just be massive so that they get their needs met. One of the things that I said in the last session. Okay, all right, here we are. And that's where we're at. Let's hear it for multiple devices. People make fun of me for traveling with a Windows tablet and an iPad, and Shibvon has her laptop. All right, so what we're remembering is that all behavior is communication, right? Everything we do is saying something. If we're really astute at reading other people's behaviors, we can get a lot of information just by watching. And that's what we need to do with our kids with Angelman. Our job is to figure out what are they saying and to determine the safest and most efficient way for them to say it that is not a negative behavior, right? So what's the most efficient way for them to get the eye contact they need? What's the most efficient way for them to try to play with a peer on the playground if they don't know how? And then we have to teach the new way. So it's not just enough to do that last piece of ignoring or not paying attention to the negative behavior. We need to teach the skills because there's a skill deficit. So why are we going to do that? The negatively viewed behaviors meet a specific function, and we have to teach better ways. The other reason why is negative behaviors not only impact you and your family, but they do impact your child's options later, right? Once your child starts having significant behaviors and gets labeled as having a behavior problem, it's going to be harder to keep them in inclusion. It's going to be harder to get them services, to keep care workers in your house. It's going to be harder to find them an adult placement when they turn 22 or 21 or 26, depending on the state you live in. So we want to teach these other more socially acceptable behaviors so that we don't end up in that situation where they're having doors shut because they haven't learned a better way to communicate. So if we want to teach positive behavior, we're going to offer communication and behavioral supports. We're going to teach and model self-talk, the ability to talk ourselves through things on AAC. We're going to look at learning emotion identification, self-soothing, which we talked about in the last session. We're going to reward communication instead of problematic behavior. And we're going to reward all the things we're teaching. So what we're going to do now... and we're going to remember that AAC must always be available, right? This isn't something that only happens during speech. It's always there. It's always available. If we want kids to use their words instead of negative behaviors, then they need constant access to their words. You can't use the look at me button instead of pulling hair if your iPad is down the hall or it isn't charged or it's still in your backpack. So with that, and the idea that you need to have words to prove you can use words, Shibvon's going to talk a little bit about her daughter, Samantha, and how we went about using AAC as an intervention for her anxiety and some of her aggressive behaviors.
All right, so I'm Shibvon Sargent, and I was asked to speak about my daughter, Samantha. 1 second. How do you make this go up so I can see my nose? Can you do it? My daughter is 15 years old, and she has deletion-positive Angelman syndrome. Thank you. Okay. Now I can't see it at all. Wait, this is rough. Okay. So Samantha was born April 19th, 2002. She's now 15 years old, and she has deletion-positive Angelman syndrome.
Just a little closer to your shirt.
Okay.
Just talk right into the mic.
Okay. Next. Yeah. When she was born, she had severe feeding problems. She started early intervention at 3 months old. Those interventions focused mostly on feeding, and then later focused on digital photographs with Velcro strips and Blue Board. As she got older and continued to be delayed in reaching milestones, more therapies were added. As a baby, she was extremely happy and social. She smiled and laughed very early, but she was also very frightened of noises and certain textures. Approximately at around 15 months, seizures started to emerge, and at we saw our first neuro at 18 months, who failed to diagnose her, and at 22 months, she was finally diagnosed with deletion-positive Angelman syndrome. Okay. Samantha started preschool in 2007, and the SLP at the time recommended PECs. Basically, what they were doing was they were giving her choices from a field of 2 icons. So our issue with that was that, if she was given a choice between crackers and pretzels, and she didn't care for either one of those things, she really didn't have a choice at all. Around this time, the aggressive behaviors began to emerge. In the beginning, it was mostly hair pulling, but over time it evolved into more biting, hitting, kicking, throwing things. Okay. So in reading about Angelman syndrome and similar populations, many people were suggesting that her frustration was due to a lack of communication. I tried for a lot of years to pursue AAC help to help her communicate, really without any success. One positive thing was that we were using iPads for leisure at that time. Over the years, the aggressions became more and more impactful in our life. The behaviors seemed very complex and were really kind of different to understand because they seemed to have a variety of causes. There were injuries to both her and other kids, as well as family members. We asked the school for help, and they basically told us that they weren't having any problems in school. She was fine in school. So I was a little skeptical, and I asked for an evaluation. So they brought in the school psychologist, and she did what's called a functional behavioral assessment, which Kate mentioned in the last session. The report, when we got it back, was 2 pages long. If any of you have ever done an FBA for your student, you know that the average FBA is usually around 30 pages. So it wasn't a very comprehensive report, and it also failed to make any recommendations. So I asked at that time for an independent evaluation, and we brought in somebody from outside the school to do an FBA, and when the report came back, it was about 30 pages long, and during that day in school, Samantha had over 40 aggressions. So that was kind of eye-opening for me. I knew that it was a serious problem, and I also knew that the school was not going to be easy to work with on that. It was really kind of impacting her learning. It affected what we could and couldn't do as a family, and it had a negative effect on the relationships, with the relationships and the people in her life. Let me just push down, right? Yeah. Okay. So we sought private AAC help. I thought, the best people in the industry at the time. We began working on flip books, strongly encouraged the point. We focused on static symbols rather than the actual picture exchange, which was explained to me at the time that was conducive to a long-term success as an AAC user. We also acquired a Dynavox V, which is a very kind of old
like
school.
A 5-pound extra slow iPad. So I said it's like a 5-pound extra slow iPad, and the screen works with pressure, not with the electrostatic charge of your finger touching it. So you have to really press down hard on it.
and it also cost $10,000. Not a great system. It was not very durable at all. She would throw it, it would break, and there was no Apple store to go to get it looked at. You would have to mail it back to Pennsylvania. So you'd have to take it out of her life. It'd be out of her life for a couple weeks while it was getting fixed. It would come back, and essentially you would start all over again. So after a while, the school felt it very difficult to use. We saw very little progress with it because of all the interruptions. So we finally decided to give up and start over with the new AAC eval. Not yet. It's not time for the revolution. The next system, she used an iPad for AAC. Now, at that time, we didn't know about guided access or dedicated devices. There was no guided access. But we were using an iPad, and it was better. But she still wasn't making any progress. She was just kind of very repetitive. She used to say, Kit Kat, Kit Kat, Kit Kat, Kit Kat, over and over again. And then, just when I was ready to give up, something amazing happened.
I think people might not know who she is.
Oh, you guys know her? Hi, Mary Louise. So we started the Angelman communication revolution. I began to hear about this incredible woman that was doing wonderful things with communication, and I was actually already going down to Florida to the Angelman convention down there. So I decided I would make it a point to hear her speak, and that day changed my entire life. It was an absolute paradigm shift. She basically said everything that I always wanted to hear about my daughter, everything I always wanted to believe about my daughter, that she could learn, that she could express herself. You gonna be okay? Yeah. And that most importantly, my daughter was clever. She taught me that communication is about human connection. It's about relationships. It's about how we interact with other people and how they interact with us in our life. Schools too often focus on toilet, more, all done. And I guess we kind of have to think about what are we teaching kids when we're doing that. We're teaching them that that's all that's important. That's all they have to communicate in their lives. But the idea should be to give a child a support for a full life rather than focusing on a lifetime full of support. And we need to teach autonomy. We need to give them a voice and teach them to use an authentic message that is their own. Woohoo, Mary Louise. Back to reality, though. Anyone ever gone to a conference and felt so inspired and gung-ho, and then you go home, and it's just, yeah. What happened, right? So that's basically what happened for me. I knew things were going to be different. I knew this is the way I wanted to go, but I really still didn't know how to implement. So I decided, I found out Mary Louise was going to be in the States. She's actually from Australia, for those of you who don't know. And she was going to be in the States, so I had her come to Boston to do a workshop. And the workshop, what's the next slide? Yep, was absolutely incredible. We got all our local AS families together to talk about AAC. And apparently I found out there was going to be some woman named Kate there that was going to tag along to the workshop. I said, okay, that's fine. You can bring her. Thank you, Maya, if you're watching. But the two ladies together really inspired me and really kind of gave me the tools that I felt like I needed to support my daughter. And from that experience, I really kind of learned my frame of reference was there was really three things that you needed to be successful. The first thing is immersion. Okay, so that's the best way we learn language is through immersion. We have to have the talker all the time, every minute of the day. It has to be charged. So what we'll do is she has it all day. It charges at night when she's sleeping. We have a backup. We have her communication system is on her leisure iPad, so if she needs to use that, she can. And there's also a dedicated backup at school. We have a battery pack in case it dies. It's really not that expensive to get a battery pack, and you can apparently get ones that look like unicorns, which is a huge bonus. Right? The easiest way is to wear it, I feel like. School actually collected some data on Samantha, and they found that when she wears her words, she wears it on a harness, that she initiates communication much, much more frequently. You also don't really have to worry about, your son or your daughter throwing it out the moving car, because if it's attached to them, they just can't. It also reduces the likelihood of them leaving it behind somewhere or it getting stolen or damaged, for a variety of reasons. So I left my slide there. So it's about immersion. And we also, it's a dedicated device, so we put it in guided access. It's a very, very simple thing to do. But we don't ever watch YouTube videos on the talker. The talker is the talker, it's her voice, and that's all it is. So Kate started a cool hashtag called See Me, See My AAC. And it's just kind of to show that there are a lot of AS kids out there in, their world. They're at school, they're at the park. Nico's, on the swing like a boss with his words. That's awesome to see that. So we always have it charged, and wherever we go, it goes with us. So that's Immersion. The next would be stimulation. So that essentially, we call it in our community, model. It takes, like Kate was saying earlier, it takes a typical child at least full year of stimulation to learn language. But the reality of it is, learning to use AAC is actually a much harder skill than learning to speak. It's actually more comparable to the skill of learning to write. And we are dealing with a population that has apraxia and, motor planning issues. So it's really hard. They need time. It takes a lot of time. So that's stimulation. And the last is support. I need people like Kate and Mary Louise to help me find the right app and how to support my daughter best. I need people in my community I can ask, wait, how do I model again? I totally forgot. Or, what is your social story, or what does your page look like for different things? You really need that kind of community support to be successful. You really need all of those three things. And it worked. She got it right away. That gave me the drive to continue. All right, tissue time. So when my daughter was 12 years old, she told me that she loved me for the first time.
And she says so much more than that. Samantha is one of those kids who uses her AAC to its fullest extent. So she's very expressive even without it, but she's able to use her AAC to get pretty much any message across. She's always surprising us. So she has things that she says that are sort of repetitive. For example, Chinese food. If you ask her any question that requires an answer that's food, the answer is Chinese food. What'd you have for lunch? Chinese food. What do you want to have for dinner? Chinese food. What's mom bringing home from work? Chinese food. But she's also able to say a whole bunch of other things that you just don't expect. So one day she was really nagging me. Shibvon was late coming home from work, and I had relieved the babysitter, so I was staying late with Samantha. And she was Chinese food, mom. And I kept answering soon, and I was modeling on the talker, soon. And she said it again, and I was sort of ending my rope, and I just looked at her. And she sort of stopped, and she took her talker, and she navigated a bunch of pages, and she said, soon. Yeah, soon. So she's a kid who, she had all these years of using other devices and working on a point and learning picture symbols, so it all came together for her. I guess last night she said to Dad, so she has an Alexa now, an Amazon Echo Alexa, and she loves to boss that thing around. And Alexa, play Christmas music. Alexa, play Christmas music. Alexa, knock, knock. But she started to ask Alexa for things Alexa can't do. And I guess Alexa, last night she said, Alexa, I want mom. So she's a darn clever girl, and she's come a long way.
Alexa has her limitations, but she is pretty awesome.
Wait till she finds out that she's going to be able to use it to change the TV stations.
That's coming. Yep. It was really incredible. She's, all the things as a parent you kind of just give up on. It's part of Angelman syndrome, being called mom. Now everything is mom. Mom, where's my pillow? Mom, I need a snack. Mom, I love you. It's just absolutely incredible.
She's also learned how to manipulate. So she'll say, I love you, Mom. Can I have ice cream?
And, like, I dare you to say no to that. All right. So around the same time, I started to really become aware of anxiety in the Angelman community. It's really only been in the last 5 years or so we've been talking about this as, a major issue. And what we realized is once she learned to use her talker to communicate, we could actually address her anxieties through her AAC. So we could give her buttons to express that. So we gave her a button that said, too many people are here. So sometimes it's just her and I in a room, and I tried not to take that personally. Right? I pay the rent, so I'm not going anywhere. But she can say, I don't feel safe, or I don't want to do something, and you know what? That's her right. And it's important that she can acknowledge that, and that is the victory. And then once she really started to be able to communicate in that way, the wisdom and brilliance of Kate Ahern, we really realized that, we could teach her to talk herself through her anxieties. And I'll let Kate, fill you in on that. But all in all, I would say communication gave Samantha a voice. She suddenly had power over her world that she had never had before. It enriched all the relationships in her life, and it taught her how to advocate for herself in her world. And I'll just kind of leave you with this quote that I came across, and it really kind of captures the way I feel about this. It's the art of building communicative competence has to do with the faith, the hope, the belief, and the commitment to the right of every individual to seek his or her full potential. Mic drop.
What time do we have until?
Yeah, just keep going. I don't know.
No, I think that's fine. Our next session starts at 1:30. It's 1 now. We skip a break. So go ahead.
Okay.
All right. If you want a break, go ahead and leave. I'm totally not having Shibvon write down all your names. Not even a little bit. All right. So, why is this not projecting?
They're never having us back.
They're so never having us back.
We enjoyed being here.
Yay! All right. You take this. Yeah. Yeah. Mics. So, you have to have words to prove you can use words. You have to have words to talk about your anxieties. I think one of the things that I learned from Samantha is that once you have words and you can talk about what you need, you don't need to use aggression to do that. You don't need to hurt people. And we're not saying she doesn't ever slips. She does. But overall, she's a totally different kid. Hold on. Lost my slide. Where'd it go? Oh, no. All right. So when I do this without Shibvon, and I talk about Samantha, I focus on not her whole journey, but on restaurants. So the first time I met Samantha and Shibvon, or the second time, we went out to eat at the 99, which is a local steakhouse in Massachusetts. Well, there's like 50 of them, so... And we went in, and Shibvon warned me that it could be a problem at restaurants, and she doesn't like to wait, especially if everybody's done eating. I didn't quite get it. I didn't really get what that meant. So people are nodding. Yeah, you didn't get it. So we finished. She was fine at first. She even ordered with her talker, and then we finished eating, and she cleared the table. And I mean, like, whoosh, table cleared. And then she cleared somebody else's table. And there was apple juice everywhere, and then she's on the ground, and then we're trying to get a coat on her while she's pulling hair. And my thought was, yeah, so we got to do something about that. So we're very lucky that we have, Samantha has a babysitter who's also a PCA, or personal care attendant, and has become a skills trainer. And in Massachusetts, you can get some funding if your child's at risk of residential placement, which is what you say to get the funding, but you all know how that works. And so we started to look at what could we do about going to restaurants, because she loves food, she loves social interactions. So we started with a social story, and it was called "Sometimes I Have to Wait to Eat." And we read that a lot. And then we started with going to a local coffee shop, Dunkin' Donuts, where we would go in specifically when it was empty, and she would order 3 munchkins and whipped cream in a cup, which is not actually on the menu, but they will make it for you. In fact, the first time we did it, we went in and she asked for whipped cream in a cup, and the woman working the counter looked at me and said, "What size cup?" And I said, "The smallest one you have." And she said, "You're no fun," and filled the extra large iced coffee cup. I was like, if you don't mind washing windows, that's fine with me. And because we had worked really hard reading the social story about going to a restaurant, and we worked really hard about, managing your anxiety when you're in a place like this. And we had rehearsed the buttons on our talker to say, "I'm ready to go, I'm done, stop." Samantha was able to eat some whipped cream, eat a munchkin, and then she said, "I'm ready to go," and we get up and we left. And we got through it, and it's been 3 years now. And last time we went out, I don't even think we read the social story first. Actually, that's true. We went to the 99 again, and that was the last time we went out to dinner. And with actually another AS family and their daughter. And she was perfect. She sat at the table. She watched the Patriots on the TV. She ate her dinner. She requested dessert 480 times. I told her 480 times that we were going to have dessert. She was perfect. Not a blip at all. And I'm not saying every restaurant trip will be like that. And I'm not saying it was easy, because it was 3 years of dealing with the anxieties around restaurants. But we got there. So what we learned was that my iPad is really slow. There we go. That communication plus behavioral supports equals progress. So that's 3 years of pictures of Samantha at restaurants. So the top left is the very first time ordering whipped cream in a cup. And then moving through various settings. In a lot of these pictures, she's ordered whipped cream in a cup. But, that's pretty good. That McDonald's visit in the bottom left, we added going to the bathroom at the restaurant to the party. Did you know that if you clap for other people when they flush, it creates a very pleasant bathroom environment? Yay, you flushed. So one of the things that I really think about in giving Samantha and all kids tools is the Communication Bill of Rights. And I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but these are the rights that ASHA and the National Joint Committee on Disabilities have believed to be important for people who use augmentative and alternative communication. And if you Google AAC Bill of Rights or AAC Bill of Rights in my name, you'll find either the old version or the new version. They're pretty similar. I would ask you all to ask your schools to attach this to the IEP. should be hanging in their classrooms, and it should be attached to the IEP. And it looks at things like the right to my own friends and social life, the right to say no, the right to make my own real choices. So not gummy bear or candy corn, but real choices. And what I found is the more we respect these rights, the less behavior we see. So when we honor the AAC Bill of Rights, we're supporting positive behavior. I'm sorry, but this was all just a ploy to use that picture of Bodie in a toolbox. Because is it not the cutest thing you've ever seen? A flannel shirt, a toolbox, his talker. So some of the things we need to consider when we're using communication as an intervention for behavioral issues is receptive language. So that's understanding what we're hearing around us. We know that a lot of kids who have Angelman syndrome have a slowed auditory processing. They need more time. We also know that a lot of kids with Angelman syndrome have some ADD symptoms, so they may not be paying attention when you're talking to them. And we know that every child with anxiety, regardless of if they have Angelman or not, may be internally distracted and unable to pay attention to what's happening around them. So some of the things we need to do is we need to be sure we're using clear and understandable language. I have a friend, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell this story with their name, so I won't. I have a friend who does a lot of interventions, and she was working with an Angelman adult and found that he was having a lot of acting out problems with aggression. And when she went and observed, she discovered that all of the problems were around leaving, when they were going to go somewhere. And then she discovered nobody ever told him in language he understood that they were going to go. They would say things like, oh, he's probably going to start acting out now. Or if we don't get in the car, we're going to be late. We have to get in the car right now. But they never said to him, we're going to get in the car and we're going to go to the store. So they made a simple rule that if you're going to go somewhere, you have to show before you go. Take his talker, show him the message, let's go to the store, and then get in the car. Anxiety problem solved, behavior problem solved. So making sure that what you're saying is being understood by using visuals, by slowing down your language. Remembering that kids need us to speak at about 140 words per minute for them to understand. We talk at 220 words per minute, and that varies by where you're from. If you're in New York City or in Boston, you're talking a lot faster than that. Okay? Just ask anybody who's not from there, who's come to visit. We talk a lot faster than that. If you want to know what 140 words per minute sounds like, Mr. Rogers. He spoke at 140 words per minute. So go on YouTube, watch an episode, listen to how he speaks, listen to the speed in which he speaks, and try to bring yourself to there. And then you're going to add either modeling AAC or visual supports to that so that you're supporting that receptive language. Another thing to really think about is processing time varies. So remember how I said in the bathroom, Samantha will clap if she has a toilet flush? She also claps every time you say the word poop. Poop. So what I use that for is when I'm working with her and she seems not to quite be with me that day, I'll say poop and I'll count how long it is before she claps. And that's how much of a delay she needs that day. And sometimes I say poop and she claps and I'm like, okay, she's right here with me. And some days it's 35 seconds, 40 seconds. And then I say, all right, today we're going slower. She's distracted or she's anxious. The processing time is slower. We're going to go slower. So you need to find something with your own kids that you can use to gauge how long their wait time is that day. And it will definitely vary. Another thing to think about is using aided language displays. So that's just pieces of paper or posters with part or all of your child's speech system on it. Hanging them up shows that language is a priority. It lets you model really, really quickly. It allows other people, peers, siblings to model. You can go to any office store and bring them like the quick words page of your pod or the main page of your Proloco or Speak for Yourself or whatever you're using and have it made into a poster. Or you can use Cafe Press, which is a website online. They'll make a 30 by 90 static cling decal if you want of your communication board to use for modeling. The reason I suggest this is when a kid's feeling anxious and you don't want to get in their space to model on their device, and if they don't have a second device, this is a good way to model language without getting in hair-pulling distance. So that's one thing that you can do. But then you can have specific aided language displays just for behavior and anxiety. So this one is kind of pod-esque. It's arranged a little bit like a pod. So it has I, you, not, feel, bored, scared, excited, mad. So it goes through some feelings. And it has why the person might be feeling that. Somebody was mean. It's too loud. It's too crowded. Something is different or someone is missing. Samantha won't get off the bus at school until she sees the people that she needs to be at school. So if they pull up at the school and somebody's not there, she won't get off the bus. So she would be able to say with this, someone's missing. I need to be alone. I need squeezes. Those deep pressure squeezes are huge in Angelman syndrome. I need music, also huge, as you well know. I need space. You can also have specific visual supports for certain messages you're working on saying. So this is a message that Samantha actually never needed to work on saying, but I had some nice pictures, so I thought I'd make a sample. But you can make these posters or pictures that show how to make a message that is an important message to your child. So let's go outside swimming is how you ask to go swimming in pod. So this gives you that map on how to get there. And this isn't particularly to use as directions. It's to be used as a reminder that you can ask with your talker. You know how to do that. Another thing to really think about is self-talk and self-regulation. One of the first things we did with Samantha is we added a page to her something's wrong section of her pod that talked about not feeling safe. So it would say, I don't feel safe. And she understood the word safe because she had already learned a safe hands cue was a word she understood, I don't feel safe. And then we have very specific messages in there for her. I'm too excited. I need to poop. I need a timeout. It's too crowded. I need to hide my eyes. Look at my eyes and I'll feel safer. I don't bite, just saying, which is kind of a joke. And a great big I can have safe hands button. And she will cue herself. So she'll be sitting around and she'll press I can have safe hands and then she'll do this. So she'll talk herself through some of this. She'll come into Angelman group sometimes, and if she's not there first, she's not always comfortable with entering a crowded room. So she'll say, I don't feel safe, too many people are here. And we'll say, that's fine, you can sit in the doorway. And she'll sit in the doorway and she's fine. So we give her those tools so that we don't have to end up at a place where somebody's getting hurt. She's able to say her anxiety, say what's wrong, and we're able to have that antecedent control that we talked about in the last session so that we don't end up somewhere where we don't need to be. But again, we have to practice these when things are calm. We have to talk about it before there's a problem. If you just try to use it when there's an issue, it's probably not going to work. I have some sample boards here of different kids' pages for self-regulation. So this is a child's page that has, I'm hurt, I'm lost, I'm sick, I'm uncomfortable, I'm scared, I'm upset. Across the bottom it has, I can be safe, breathe in, breathe out, I need squeezes. The alarm button makes a god-awful alarm noise. Here's another child's page. This kid actually likes to say, "Stop bullying me." Be like, "I'm not bullying you. I asked you to take your coat off. Stop bullying me." Okay. Here's another child's page. This child has a lot of pain issues, so there's a lot of pain things in here. He also has a button that just says, "No, no, no," which he loves to say. Here's another one, similar to I actually already showed you that one. This is Samantha, so this is her main page, but you can see in the upper right corner that she has these fast hits right on her main page. So and they don't all have words, but the blue circle is "look at me," which worked. Her big behavior for getting someone to look at her was throwing things. So, and now it's going, "Ah!" And we'll say, "No, ah!" We'll say, "Oh, you can say 'look at me,'" and she'll say, "look at me." The yellow button that's jagged says, "I can have safe hands," "I can wait," "I can calm down," or "I'm just excited." And those numbers are the counts of how many times she's pressed those buttons. So you can see she's told herself, "I can have safe hands," almost 2,500 times. And "look at me," almost 1,000. And then when you get further into her device, she has the "I don't want to do it," and she has "I don't feel safe." And you can see that "I don't feel safe" is 353 times. And then within that's her page within "I don't feel safe." And what's the biggest? "I need a timeout" is the biggest. Sometimes she'll also just tell us that she'll say "naughty," and then she'll be naughty. So we've learned, like, naughty means like duck. It's a good tip-off. Come on, iPad. You can do it. You can change slides. Good job. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to have planned teaching for increasing communication and decreasing anxiety. So you start by identifying something that causes stress or behaviors. You pinpoint specifically what is stressful or anxious, anxiety-provoking. You write social stories. You make videos about that. You model and rehearse. And then you start with tiny exposures. So you don't start at the big restaurant. You start at a restaurant where you can leave fast. And you build up to larger sit-down restaurants. And then you keep rehearsing repeat behaviors. Come on. There's Samantha watching one of her social stories on the Apple TV. Wow, is my iPad slow? We have about 3 minutes. In that time, maybe that slide will change. But does anybody have any questions?
Do you have social stories to share, like so that we can?
Would you like to see a social story?
Well, no, I'd love to be able to use some of your social stories you've already created, so I don't have to start from scratch.
So the problem with the problem with doing it that way is the social stories are very specific to the child. So a lot of times they don't translate over. So even if I gave them to you, you'd have to rewrite them. But if you message me on Facebook or something, I can send you. Most of my stories are in Pictello, but I can send you the Pictello file. So here's one of Samantha's very early social stories from 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe.
Sometimes I get nervous. Sometimes I get scared. I feel worried. I feel like I might cry. I get upset. I hide my eyes. am worried and upset because people are mad at me. People get mad at me when I pull their hair or pinch them. No one likes to get hurt. I know how to be safe. I can have safe hands. I can have safe feet. If I am safe, then people will not be mad at me. I don't bite. Just saying. Sometimes it is hard when I'm nervous and excited. But I can calm down. I can use my talker to help. I can talk and be safe. I am a safe and smart girl. When I stay safe, everyone feels better, even me.
So that's an example. I'm happy to, with the child's permission, the mother's permission, I'm happy to share the ones that I have, but they are all pretty specific. Yeah. No, just yell real loud.
So, speaking about anxiety, my angel's 13 years old, and he has been using Proloquo for probably 4 years, pretty proficiently, but we're working with an SLC that has gone to the AAC in the desert, very involved in our community, and she is really recommending him switch to LAMP because she feels like he can motor plan and he would be able to make more gains using LAMP, but he already has so much anxiety and he's so proficient in Proloquo that I'm like, I don't know, it's taking his words away that he has. How do you navigate switching?
Well, I mean, the first question would be, are you really switching for him or for her?
Yeah.
So if the answer is you're really switching for him and you're not switching for her because she's more comfortable with LAMP.
No. She works with Proloquo, she works with LAMP, and we started off when she first evaluated him, she said, he is not a beginner with Proloquo, and I refuse to switch him. She said, I think that would be inhumane. I think he's made great strides.
So why now?
But now she's worked with him for 1.5 years, and she's saying, oh my gosh, I see that this child could build more sentences with this other program, and I feel like we're doing him an injustice. But then you know how that is. Like, all my caregivers already kind of know Proloquo. The whole school knows Proloquo. Nobody wants to change now, including myself, because I'm like, I can't teach myself a whole new program.
I don't think that I have any great advice for you. I'm a real device agnostic. I think that the best system is the system that works. Sounds to me like you have a system that works. I don't think there's any harm in borrowing an iPad with LAMP and letting him play with it. And if he likes it, then you can think about doing it. But at this point, it's as much his decision as anybody else's. So I'd expose him to it and see how he feels, but I would never take away the Proloquo. I would you let him have both until he decides he's going to stick with one. But it sounds to me like you already know the answer to this question. I think, do we have time for one more and then we're out of time? All right.
Thank you. I've learned so much today, and the mom as well. Yay, Shibvon! I have a daughter, Nicole, who's 22 years old, who has been exposed to so many different communication systems. I have been told that using augmentative, AAC was difficult for her, so we had always used Velcro pictures. And while she was very successful with that, being now in a group home, you are always, staff is changing and things are happening really quickly. And I noticed on your stories that you had real pictures mixed with board maker pictures or those kinds. And she recognizes some, but she's much better with real pictures. And I found out there was a communication system out there, Toby, that you can import all real pictures into. But I know that seems like a lot of work, but...
Not only is it a lot of work, but it's actually not any better. So
Really?
All of the research says that kids learn the meaning of symbols based on the meaning we ascribe to the symbols as their communication partner. So you can draw a squiggle on a piece of paper, but if you repeatedly use that squiggle to mean milk, eventually it means milk.
Right.
So I wouldn't go crazy with the photographs. She'll learn symbols. If she can do a photo, she can do symbols.
Okay, that's good to know because she does have an iPad. She has learned a communication. It wasn't really a communication. It was more like a fun thing. And I taught her on all the buttons how to use it. So I know she can use these things. I feel confident with that. Thank you.
I think we used to believe in these hierarchies of real objects and then photographs and then line drawings and then words. And what we've discovered is, we were full of it.
Okay, good.
We just
That's
sort of
good to
made
know.
that up.
Very good to know.
Yeah, so if I were you, I would keep doing what you're doing because it's working to some degree, but at the same time, introduce a robust system with symbols and start modeling. And I don't know what Toby showed you, but every app on the market lets you use photographs.
Okay,
it's not
great.
unique to them in any way. But one of the things we found with photographs is kids start using them as photo albums.
Yes.
So instead of pressing the picture, mom does mean mom, they're like, oh, look, it's my mom. I'm looking at her. I'm talking. So it's particularly in Angelman, we almost avoid photos because it turns into like a photo album instead of a communication thing.
Okay, that's good to know too.
Yeah.
It's just, it's frustrating when an aide meets you in the restaurant and they come walking in with her and I say, oh my gosh, where's the talker? Where's your pictures? I would be so frightened to take my daughter somewhere without some way of communicating. I don't know how they do it. And it's frustrating for me as a mom to keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. So eventually I have to get a good enough system that I can show everyone.
I mean, I'd pick something robust and start modeling.
Okay, thank you.
And like I said, I'm agnostic. Just pick whatever feels good to you. So it's time for us to stop. I do have up on the screen right now, we're in the middle of a contest. I run a Facebook group called AAC through Motivate, Model, Move Out of the Way. And we're in the middle of a 12 days of modeling contest. So if you post pictures of yourself or somebody else modeling language and post it to the group with that hashtag or those hashtags, then there'll be a prize at the end. I haven't twisted any vendor's arm into a prize yet, but I'm sure I'll get somebody. There'll be a prize from Desiree. It'll be a harness. There'll be a prize of a harness for your iPad from Desiree for the winner. And this isn't at random winner. As long as you post 12 times modeling over the course of December, I'm going to draw from a hat, and Desiree is going to send you a prize. Thank you, Desiree. And thank you all.